What's up, Wraeclast? It's Wabacha here. Going to be bringing you another podcast today with RaizQT. It is RaizQT, right?
Correct.
And, of course, with Hedgie.
What's up, guys?
And, yeah, so we're going to be talking about a few things today. We're going to be talking about defenses in the Awakening because it has kind of been a subject of debate, obviously, ever since 2.0 has released. And we're going to be talking about the upcoming race season, which I think a lot of us are really excited for. But a couple days ago, Raiz died. You died on a 9k effective HP character. I mean, so let's just talk about that for a second. What happened? How to go down?
That's a great start. Talking about my death.
It is.
Well, what can I say? I didn't have a lot of armor. A lot of things hit me. A lot of damage snapshotting, and I ended up dying. That's just how it looks right now. Granted, I did roll kind of a suicide map, but that's just PoE, you know. It's balanced around logging out, so to say, and you have to have those type of one-shot mechanics.
To piggyback off that, I mean, how do you feel about the new tiering of map mods and how it's going over what, like anything we've seen before? Like when you start, like I had some experience rolling some 79s and 80s, and damn, those mods were so sketchy. And I mean, that in combination of just the overall global damage increase, I mean, what do you think? Is it sustainable? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I think it's a high risk, high reward kind of deal, which I really, really enjoy, especially with that character. I was playing an explosive arrow character, so you could pretty much run anything, no regen, all that kind of stuff. The only problem was somewhat reflect, but not so much. But the character was level 92, and I don't feel like I've tested maps sufficiently to really have a set in stone opinion. I feel like there's a couple issues, for sure. But when it comes to the damage, high risk, high reward, I feel like it's justified. And you kind of have to run those maps to really, really sustain it.
But don't you feel that that's going to hurt build diversity if people have to build around having insane amounts of crappy mods, like more than we have ever seen before, like the over 100%, the over 50%, half regen? Like, what are your thoughts on, what builds are going to be viable to be able to clear those maps, with LE weak, vulnerability, reflection, curses?
Well, it all boils down to when does the game stop, I think, for the average player. And I mean, build diversity is great, and I'm a big fan of all sorts of different builds doing all kinds of high content, but it's pretty impossible to have more than just a couple builds that will be able to do everything. So it's more of a, when does the game stop for me? When does my build, is it when my build stops being efficient? Is it when it stops being effective? For me personally, I don't think it hurts build diversity, simply because the maps are higher level, so you don't have to get, like, you can run multiple lower maps and you're still going to be fine, and level 90 is completely achievable. It's just those higher levels that don't really bother a lot of people. I mean, how many people really get more than like a level 95, which is pretty much comparable to like a current level 92, right? So I don't think it's gonna hurt players too much.
It's actually interesting that you say that because I, in one of the recent podcasts, I had said that level 90 is probably more achievable than it ever has been right now. And I agree. That's a very good point that you say that, when does the game end for the average player? Because a lot of people are making fuss right now about how the maps that are 79 to 80 or 78 to 82, or maybe the tier 79 to 82, but those maps, they're very hard to sustain, and the mods that you get on them are extremely rippy. In regards to defenses, though, you said you didn't have really any armor. You had 9k effective HP, which, people really, they might think that that's enough, but as it turns out, it's really not enough at all. It actually is not very good.
Yeah, I mean, life isn't a form of mitigation in any way in PoE. It has never been. Having a lot of life wasn't crazy. I don't think MOM was like ever crazy because you had more effective life. It was good because of Arctic Armor, like simplified the gameplay so much, and you could build off of it. But yeah, the build was very like reactive. You had to react to things, and things had to pop. So like Molten Shell had to trigger, so I get more armor, and Feeble had to happen. I had to have it granted up, and then I would have like 15, maybe 20k armor. But once mobs start snapshotting their damage, none of that matters because all you have is your life, and in my case, that wasn't enough.
Right. And mobs snapshotting their damage is kind of something that is really hard to deal with because, specifically in your explanation of your death on your YouTube channel, you said that roas are a good example of some of those snapshots. And a lot of times, you get those off-screen roas and you get those things that you don't even have a chance to react to. And what sucks is, like you mentioned, Path of Exile is to a degree balanced around the fact that you could just log out. But I don't think logging out should ever be your reflex. Like what you did, you pre-potted when you died, and it was a courtyard, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so when you died in a courtyard, your reflex, you pre-potted to as much as you could. It was questionable if you actually got the iron flask up or the granite flask up in time for before the mobs started their swing animation. But looking back on it, the only thing you really could have done with the time that you were given reliably that would have saved you was log out. And I think that's too far into the point of like, well, we should balance the game around the fact that people could log out. Because as soon as the mobs got up to you, they two-shot you, and it was like, I want to say it was maybe under, a third of a second or to a half a second. There's like no time in it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the way the things that aligned up in that map, I mean, it was already rippy to begin with the added elemental and then the vulnerability, and then you had sub fizz on a scary high fizz mob. I mean, it kind of was coming. I mean, I'm actually curious, how much did you spend on average to roll your maps, or did you just get to a point where you're like, this is becoming inefficient with my currency, I'm just gonna run this and try to play my best?
Just because of the build, I think I was pretty much able to roll a map. Like I would only ever re-roll a map if the quantity and the back size wasn't enough. So like the danger really didn't matter for me. But it's like a learning process, you know. There's still a lot more for us to learn about the maps, a lot more to learn about defenses because everything has changed. And yeah, this was just part of the learning process. I mean, somebody has to die. I died. Now we know, right?
So you're saying like on average, what, maybe 5 chaos that you spent just trying to
On a
land a
map?
higher quantity? Yeah.
Oh no, if you completely disregard the cost of the map, just strictly currency to roll
Yeah.
it, then y- one chaos at most. Typically, I would
Wow.
just alk my map and that was it. Maps rode pretty well. I mean, most of the maps that you just alk, you get like 80 plus quantity. If you well, you actually you gotta chisel them too, so that's like an additional chaos. Okay, so let's say like 2 chaos, because I forgot about the chisels. So yeah, most of the maps you would get with just an alk are like 80 plus quantity with the chisels, and then like one mod that affects you, so that's pack size, so maybe like 14 to 16 pack size or something, and I'd say that's good enough.
Okay,
Uh,
but when you were making these decisions, were you pressured by the lack of having more maps, or like how did you conclude that okay, this is good enough? Like what told you, or like, oh, I'm running out of maps, I'm gonna start running them higher, or like what was your
I
thought
really didn't
process? You didn't have
I
one?
really didn't change anything from before. High like
Okay.
I always rolled my maps high risk, high reward. The only thing that would affect the way I rolled my maps was how much EXP did I want to get during that day. So I would maybe risk it a little bit more and like roll easier maps. So risking having less maps, but I can run them way, way faster. So going over like quantity over quality, so to say. And yeah, I mean, I switched it up a couple times, but really everything came out okay. There is some interesting thing that I've noticed with pretty much everyone who was mapping at that point, which was around level 88 to like 92, you're kind of in a dead spot with maps. And that's like 88 to 92 right now is like huge, or maybe not 92, maybe like 91. Um, you're kind of in a dead spot where you don't really have a base of 75s or like
Mhm.
76s, but you're kind of getting 78s. So I've noticed a lot of players getting frustrated over that, where they would like, hey, I'm all the way up to level 80 maps, and then they're like, but I dropped to 74s, which wasn't true. They had like 180 map, and then they immediately went down to 74s because they didn't have a base, right? They just rolled
Yeah.
their higher maps, and I mean, you blank 3 maps in a row, and you're out of maps. But that's something that's fixed with quantity. That's why I'm saying it's like a 88 to maybe 91 problem, because it just goes away if you just keep rolling maps. So I thought it was okay, but you can't really base your off of like one character run. You can't really base anything in PoE because it's all RNG based.
I think people are jumping to conclusions with how mapping really works because before Awakening, reliably you could get 77, not reliably, but you could get 77, 78s and a 79. But with everything higher now, it's just the next level of maps are just harder to get than they were before. So,
Well, I mean, that largely stems due to there are cutoff points, there are break points with map mods. What's the Cardo cutoff point? Is it like 74 or 75? Is the last time you can see a Cardo?
I don't know off the top of my
I have
head.
no idea.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't.
know that Cardos are actually banned from the top tier maps, probably from like 78 to 82 or something like that. But that happening, I'm just curious to see like if people were managing to sustain with like crazy map mods. And I mean, do you have any regrets? I mean, if you could go back in time, how would you have played it differently? Would you re-roll the map, or would you have done something else with your build, or let's
I
just
was
say
pretty happy with it.
hypothetically?
I was pretty happy with the way maps were progressing, to be honest. A lot of my friends were in the exact same situation, and a lot of people in general around me, and they felt like they were getting scammed. Because, like, if somebody's doing a map that's like 10 levels under them, for whatever reason, they feel like this isn't good enough EXP, when in all reality, it probably is because you're clearing the map faster. I don't know. There's like a big problem pretty much since Beyond with like entitlement to maps, in my opinion, where people were just like, "Hey, let me throw a transmute on this map, on this 78 map, and what do you know? It drops like 3 more 78 maps because it's Beyond." And then, what was the next league? There was another league. Uh,
Invasion, Beyond, Bloodlines.
Bloodlines, there we go. And in Bloodlines, that really didn't happen, like at all. In Bloodlines, you actually had to roll your maps. You had to put in the currency, so people had a big problem with that. People were saying stealth nerf and like all that kind of stuff, even though none of it happened. And then people realized how valuable Zana is, and the fact that you actually have to put in a ton of currency into your maps, but to great return. But people don't treat their maps as currency. People don't see a reason to use whatever it is, 8 chaos on like a torment mod, or 8 chaos on an invasion mod just to increase the quantity. They don't look at it that way. They think 8 chaos for a little bit of quantity, that's terrible. When in all reality, they should be thinking about it. I put in 8 chaos. Sometimes I don't get a return, but most likely I will get a return out of this map and potentially get another map that I can possibly sell for an Exalt Plus if it's like a 78 or whatever. Right now, maps are extremely expensive. So maps are always an investment. The same way cardo boxes were always an investment in the past. No matter how much currency you put into it, it's always going to be returned as long as you sell your maps.
Well,
Uh,
as much as I love this conversation, we're going to be talking about defenses in the Awakening. We're kind of straying off.
hand in hand.
They do go hand in hand, but I agree. Talking about maps and defenses, they do go hand in hand, but not so much in the cost and sustaining map pools and everything. So let's try to dial it back and just relate it more to defenses in the Awakening.
See, I'm not quite there yet. Like I'm still building up my 75 map base, like 88 and a half. But eventually I'll get there. And when I'm watching, people like Rise running vulnerability with extra elemental damage, I don't want to do that as a melee. Like that's just gonna wreck me. And to me, that like I'm trying to think of like how I want to plan this in the future. So number one, I don't go broke, and number two, I don't die. And I'm thinking, well, one thing's for damn sure. I probably end up gonna spend, a lot more chaos rolling my maps just to get them, runnable and not super rippy, but still have a decent amount of returns. Or the other alternative is play with a support character. So I was kind of surprised that Rise wasn't like, yeah, I kind of wish I was playing with the support in that map, or I kind of wish that I was just like, self casting and endurance charges or something.
No, not really. No regrets when it comes to this. I mean, I could have re-rolled the map, but like again, it's a learning process, and I've literally run like hundreds upon hundreds of those maps. Sure, I was just getting into like the level 80 maps, and I was still understanding how much damage I can take, and this was still a new build for me. So all of these things coming together, just lack of knowledge, and it resulted in
There you
that.
guys go. RaizQT, no regrets.
Oh no, no regrets.
Well, to me, it's curious that you say that because using Enduring Cry and generating endurance charges is pretty straightforward and easy,
Mhm.
but it is also kind of a hassle. And, GGG has made an effort to step away from things that they force players to do, right? Like they change reduce mana. That's just an example of something that they don't want everyone to have to do it. But right now, it feels like everyone should be using or has to use endurance charges once they get to a certain level in the
Yeah,
end game.
that's a good point. I think 2015 is the year of the endurance charge. I think people are starting to appreciate them as much as they appreciate their power charges or frenzy charge. I think, there's so many ways to get them, and that with in the combination of the cast and damage taken, immortal call, and decreased duration setup being nerfed the way it is, people are going to feel like, well, I'm getting wrecked by physical damage. I could either cast endurance chart or enduring cry and get some substantial life returns out of it, and then be like tankier against fizz and things like that. I think I kind of like seeing a more active role in people appreciating endurance charges. I mean, I've been a super fanboy of endurance charges since like Evasion, so I like run them always on my build or whenever I can.
Well, there's also the counter argument that all of it is reactive. Like you have to react to it. So for instance, in my case, the map was fully cleared pretty much. Like there were like literally 5 mobs left that just killed me. But the map was pretty much fully cleared. So you wouldn't have endurance charges running anyway. Maybe you could have popped like 1 or 2 before the mobs got to me, but most likely they wouldn't have helped the same way the granite didn't quite help me because I had to react to it. And I'm just like not a big fan of something like that because it's the same for people, for instance, asking me why don't I use Vol Grace? It's so good. To me, Vol Grace is something you have to if you're in a sketchy situation, you're in a sketchy situation. You have to play it in a way that where you most likely base it off of your playstyle, which is maybe logging out, maybe it's like heavy potting, maybe it's TPing out, something like that. So you already have to know that you're in danger to react to something. And typically stuff like that you can just avoid in some other way, like logging out. So I don't particularly like it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but doesn't that increase the argument of using endurance charges because you're passively mid? I mean, they last for 10 seconds. I mean, you could just run around the whole map with them up, right? I mean,
See,
Well, in
I
PoE,
don't.
it's like the perfect storm, I think. Like when everything goes wrong, everything goes wrong. Everything went wrong in my rip, and for instance, you can look at people like Weasel in the last league. I think he died at like number 1 during the league or either doing a race, and his defense was keeping up Immortal Call 100% of the time. And it worked great. It worked great for like 94 levels or whatever he got. And then he dropped it for like a half a second, literally, and 10 frogs jumped on him off screen and he instantly died. And it's exactly that. When everything goes wrong in PoE, everything goes wrong. And that's when you die. Even when it's not lack of knowledge, it's just the perfect storm.
speaking of reaction and death, I must say I was quite disappointed in your reaction to your death. I liked your reaction to the losing the 5 link and the rollback 10 times more than this. I was like expected to see no, but you're like, oh,
It was a little
all right.
underwhelming because of that. But
Yeah,
you had
like,
said
come
multiple
on,
times.
Rise. Where's the emotion?
Yeah, you had said multiple times on your stream before. You're like, "Well, I'm gonna die." I think you said it when we
Yeah.
break top 50, I'm gonna die. When I 6-link this, I'm gonna die. And then sure enough,
Yeah.
like you did all those things, and then you did rip.
Yeah,
But
that day exactly. I said 4 times that I'm gonna rip. It was because I skin transferred, which always makes me die. It was because I got a 21 explosive arrow, which always makes me die. It was because I had like other gems to level up, which always makes me die. And there was something else. Oh, the top 50 thing, yeah. So I was like 99% sure that I'm gonna die that day. So I was okay with it. I was comfortable.
Rise is becoming the PoE Oracle. PoE
Yes,
voodoo is
sir.
real, guys. Confirmed.
well, okay, so although I like endurance charges, I like enduring cry, but there's something I don't like about it. I think its duration is a little short. So right now, enduring cry and war cries aren't affected by cast speed anymore. And so just using them is a little awkward for some players, depending on, especially if you are using Enduring Cry specifically. You're doing that to generate them, but even using it puts you in a degree of danger because it stops your character. It's a little slow. It's definitely slower than it was before when you could throw faster casting on it, right? Like, and so it feels a little awkward. And then on top of that, I feel like a lot of times when players are using Enduring Cry, and this is pulling from my experience personally, but when I use Enduring Cry on my Poison Arrow character, I only do it like for safety, as most people do, but I often don't need it, so I kind of forget about it. And it's not that I like forget about it because I'm just so absent-minded. I forget about it because I don't feel like I need it. But
That's
then
Well, that's the thing.
yeah,
That's
that's when it's
exactly
gonna
the
bite
thing.
you in the ass.
right, yeah, but so with that said, and I don't necessarily want to bring forward problems without suggestions or solutions, but I feel like maybe an increase to all charges in their duration, just a base increase a little bit, like to 12 seconds, for example,
Yeah.
may help this out because if the base duration was a little bit longer, would you see yourself using them more, Rise?
Possibly. I mean, my biggest issue is to me, endurance charges simplify the general gameplay the same way Leech does and all kinds of those mechanics, but they don't prevent you from dying.
Right.
So that's why I'm not a big fan of something like that.
But what about
But
frenzy charges?
frenzy charges are a bit different because
Because
they
they're
affect your
awesome.
clear speed, right? So you always wanna go faster. Because
But see,
like
okay, go ahead.
yeah, well, to me, how risky I play my character is completely dependent on what kind of clear speed I want to achieve. So often people are like, why does this guy log out? Why does this guy do this? Why would you even play hardcore if you're gonna log out? And the argument is I play in a specific way because I have logging out available to me, right? Because I know I can log out, I play riskier. So that's why I really enjoy stuff like frenzy charges because they don't break the game, so to say, because logging out is kind of breaking the game. But it's still available in the game while increasing your clear speed. So it's something that you do want because it's always faster. But like endurance charges won't prevent you from dying, which is the ultimate goal of any form of defense.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna like agree and disagree with some parts of that. Like, I feel that people are pushing aside defenses for the ability to play reckless. Like the fact that you have so many defenses that you're not, potentially kiting this exile or kiting this beyond guy. You're actually up front in his face, just holding down left click or right click. The ability to be more aggressive. Like you were saying, you as a player are, making those instant calculations. You're always assessing, what threats are incoming or what potential threats are, especially when you just, zone into a map. You look at what the mob type is, what map mods you have that are going to scale with those particular mobs. But, for me, I mean, like I said, I'm not at the super high maps yet, but I'm still rolling them um, rare, high quantity, as much as I can without having to spend a lot of chaos. And I'm running around with 74% mit with just, endurance charges. And then I have fortify. It's like almost always up. And things like that allow me to play a bit more reckless. Like I always dive into the middle of the pack and just start sweeping away. And it's really, really fast paced. because I'm so tanky. If I'm naked, if I'm not running these charges and I don't use Fortify, I'm gonna be, kiting the crap out of these mobs and playing very, very defensively, really hindering my clear speed. So I
Yeah.
feel like, defenses can get overlooked as offense when, you know, but I mean, it could all scale out of control where it doesn't even matter anyways. Like we've seen the, what's it called, boss, the turkey and the
Yeah.
the dog. Dude, that duo is insane. Like I was able to handle the dog, but not the turkey. The poison arrow damage is disgusting. Even with like positive 50, he was still wrecking my face.
No, no, no. You know what the issue is? You probably killed one of them and then just the other one was left alive, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
Because they have a enrage. Once one of them dies, the other one enrages and gets like 400% more damage.
Wow. Are you
Yeah,
serious?
I
That's
didn't know
why.
about it too.
Dude,
Because I
that's
killed
why.
the dog and I'm just like, let's just kill the bird. And then he like rooted me in place with like a rain of arrows. I couldn't move and he was just hitting me for like 4.5K every shot. I'm just like, what?
I remember seeing that on your stream.
That's why PoE knowledge is power. Like that bird was
There you
like
go.
almost unkillable. Like, and I had like godly gear. I was just like, what the hell is going on? He wasn't wrecking me this hard.
Yeah.
But it's just like the Vol twins, I guess.
Yeah, it's all about that thin balance, right? It's exactly why MOM Arctic Armor in the past was so strong because it was exactly what you needed for just enough defense with like just enough sacrifice to make it work. And right now people are still discovering that balance where it is, where's the balance where having more damage than defense is actually effective because if like you said, if you have more defense, you don't have to kite. So this is
Right.
something that players will learn in time, I'm sure.
I mean, we've
Hopefully I will
seen
learn it in time soon.
HVR. I mean, he pretty much made like a max resist all the time with Surgeon Flask and Mjolnir. And I mean, his HP wasn't impressive, but it was all about mitigation and killing, the threats before they could do anything or leeching it back instantly. I mean, there are multiple layers where, he was just able to go reckless in, the sketchiest maps just because of, the flask.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, he was indestructible. That's how you do Bird Zero
Yeah.
and hardcore in general.
Yeah.
You're literally like indestructible. You have 100% resist, you have 100% physical mitigation, nothing can do damage to you, and all it boils down to is just having that rotation so that you don't mess up and instantly die, because you will, but when you have like 10 seconds to do a single action, that's just how it is.
So, okay, so I mean, with all this said, it, as I had said earlier, it seems like everyone kind of just needs to have endurance charges because you need that physical reduction. What I think sucks about this is that if you build a character that is armor based, great, you're fine. You have that physical damage reduction, whatever. It's already built in, like you're using it, right? But then we have these other defenses that exist. We have evasion, we have dodge, we have energy shield, we have CI, which arguably CI is in not a very good spot right now. And then evasion and dodge, even if you are evasion and dodge, you still need armor to a degree. Because if you get hit, because you can, it's completely possible to still get
Uh,
hit.
I mean, I disagree, like kind of with that because I mean, there's still stuff. I mean, granted, the stuff is expensive. Like Taste of Hate and Lightning Coil is like the best answer for a non-armor based class because just converting your resistance into pseudo armor. But
And
I've
see, that's why you should have just let me finish because I was about to get to that. And unfortunately, this is kind of one of the things that has been driving the price of Coil and Taste of Hate up. Like
yeah.
they're outside of its rarity tier being changed. But what I'm trying to say is everyone needs a way to deal with physical damage.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of your build. If you're evasion dodge, you still need it. Like, be it lightning coil, be it running a granite flask, and seriously, for everyone out there, running a granite flask with acro is not like terrible by any means. It's actually pretty effective, especially if you have a few mods or a few passives that give you percent armor, but whatever. But you still need physical damage reduction as just every character, which is one of the nice things about endurance charges, because it gives you that flat damage reduction, that flat physical damage reduction. But everyone needs it to a degree.
Personally, I feel that armor is armor with fortify, and Arctic armor
Let's
is like.
ignore fortify though, because
What?
fortify is
What?
I want to know. I want to ignore fortify for the specific reason that casters and range attack players or characters generally will not be using it. That's why I want to leave fortify out.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
having multiple layers. I mean, I would like to see more evasion based on the right side of the tree. I mean, it's so often that when people go to choose their bandit rewards, that they're going to choose the power charge and frenzy charge, just because the evasion right side of the tree is so easy to scale damage with crit, awesome nodes, and things like that. What I feel like the weaknesses on that side is the lack of HP. If they just got a little bit more HP, I think they would be in a pretty decent spot. You can get and stack dodge and evasion to really good amounts. Like I want to say around 45% evasion is really easy with 40% both dodge and spell dodge. But the thing with that is you are still very vulnerable to the spike Ellie damage, and mainly I'm talking about like volatiles.
Mhm.
I was getting one shot with like 5.2k HP, on the beta from a volatile that, only had like one damage mod. And I was like, well, that's kind of shits on, the evasion parade. Main culprit is kind of like the thick skin wheel and that whole connector. There's so many dead nodes where you can't really get really good life. That I would like to see, some love there. And then they would be in a really, really good spot. But I think the left side of the tree, the Scion life wheel, and all the jewels, the jewel trafficking, that's where it's at, I think. But Mind Over Matter's in a pretty decent spot. People can go, Zealot's Oath, they can go, Energy Shield, Eldritch Battery. Those are all options. You definitely need to be more cautious as a player. I mean, when you are a caster, if you're not cold critting or freezing reliably, you definitely need to, worry about your dancing more, so to say, because, incoming projectiles. I mean, while you can handle a certain amount, like steady inflow of damage is not something that you ever want to take unless your leech is like insane. And I don't think I've seen any build lately with insane leech where I'm like, oh my god, he's taking so much damage, but he's leeching it all back. I mean, I could be wrong, but I
Oh,
haven't
that
seen
was
it yet.
that was the thing with my explosive arrow build. It was pretty much if you just survive the initial half a second, you just fully don't leech it back, but you use life gain hit with frenzy and then GMP and chain, and you just get it back instantly. But you can't really do that with energy shields. So, oh, you can kind of do it with the jewels, I guess, but you can't get those amounts of like just life gain on hit as you can with the gem.
There's something I actually want to say about Mind Over Matter, that Mind Over Matter doesn't actually reduce the damage that you take. It just redirects it. So you don't get inherent damage reduction with Mind Over Matter. And the way it used to work before was it worked so well with Arctic Armor because Arctic Armor was the damage reduction, right? But Mind Over Matter just redirects your damage. So even if you do go Mind Over Matter right now, if you don't have armor still, if you still don't have that mitigation, you're still gonna,
But it is pseudo mitigation because it's taking it out of your mana or your energy shield.
But once your mana hits zero, it's the
Right.
what Mind Over Matter does is it gives you effective HP.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
not
I'd agree
mitigation.
with that.
It is not mitigation. It's never been mitigation. It only worked really well with a great form of mitigation. So right now, Mind Over Matter is kind of weird because if you are a Mind Over Matter character, you're not going to have unless you are actively getting your endurance charges through Enduring Cry or whatever other means. You could use a cast when damage taken Warlord's Mark setup. You could do that to automate your endurance charges. You're just not going to have that mitigation. So Mind Over Matter is weaker because of the change to Arctic Armor.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think it does its job. It allows you it gives you a fighting chance against spike damage. Your character is never meant to just face tank as a caster.
Okay,
You're
but
you're
but effective HP. Rise, how much HP, effective HP, did you have when you died just 2 days ago?
Well, you can't really base like the entire game
Yeah.
concept off of one character dying.
Oh no, I
I had
know.
9k life, but
But what I'm
you
saying,
can't look at it that way.
no, I get that. But what I'm saying is like effective HP gives you a fighting. Okay, whatever. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interrupted.
But yeah, I mean, I was going, towards along the lines of you can do stuff with, mind over matter and, vol discipline or, vol clarity. I mean, that would just help your usage of mana for your skills and giving you more, pseudo mitigate. I'll just call it pseudo mitigation because it is a buffer. And if you have an insane supply or influx of energy shield, it is going to count to health. The only thing it's not going to do is chaos damage. That's a problem. Degeneration damage. But other than that, like you're still in a really good spot, and I think it does what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be a buffer, not a defense. And I feel like you should be more agile as a caster, making proper movements where you're standing still, getting the Arctic armor hits, or the mitigation hits. You know, I honestly feel if you're not running Arctic armor and endurance charges as a caster, you're just ticking away at the clock until you die. Like you're just going to die without running both of those.
I think acrobatics and like evasion, MOM, and all that stuff is in a pretty good spot. Honestly, it's just the big problem is how powerful armor is compared to everything else. I
Mhm.
don't necessarily feel like the physical damage is too much. Some things obviously could be balanced. I mean, one of my friends today, Plasma, he died to like some freaky Tempest stuff. Like some things can be rebalanced, and people are talking a lot about physical damage. But in general, I feel like the balance of the game is there. It's just they've been trying to force players to use armor for such a long time, and they've been like buffing it and buffing it and buffing it, and people weren't using it because they had no reason to use it because MOM was available. That now it's just like too much. I talk about it in my video where it's basically GGG goes with the stance of if somebody doesn't use this, obviously it's bad. It's like people don't play armor CI Aegis builds, even though it's like the tankiest thing you can ever do. So we have to buff it. And it was the same thing with Split Arrow, which was like the strongest ability in the game on live servers before the beta, and then they buffed it because nobody was using it. And this was the same thing with armor. They kept on buffing armor, and the community didn't adapt, and they just over buffed it now.
Yeah, but
Th-
isn't that okay as a design? Like they're switching it up for like a season, and maybe they can
Oh
revisit
yeah.
it, and then get
Well,
somebody get people to play something different or in a different way. I
I
mean,
feel like it's just a bit much.
yeah,
It's just a bit much compared to everything else.
like you said, like before, you just go Eldritch Battery, and you can just invest so much in crit because your resource is done, and Mind Over Matter was so good. Just call it a day. And now, there was just no reason. I mean, it's not that armor was necessarily bad back then. It's just
Hmm.
people had a better alternative, so they're gonna swing,
Yes.
towards a cheaper. Well, that was the biggest thing. It was so damn cheap, and it
Yeah.
was so effective. It wasn't to say armor was bad. It's just the alternative seemed very obvious for the player. Well, I got 10 chaos orbs. What can I do? You know.
Yeah. But it was reversed before. I mean, it took people like 2 leagues or something, like literally 6 months before everyone was using iron reflexes, even though MOM and everything was available in the game. You could even do like MOM and iron reflexes, making your character pretty much indestructible. And it took players a really long time to switch to that and for that to become pretty much flavor of the month where everyone was using a Cloak of Defiance and everything. So this is just going to take some time. But the thing is, it was taking time. GGG wanted to do this change and it was taking time already. And yeah, now it's just overtuned compared to everything else. I think the balance of the game is fine. I just think armor is too powerful. And it's boring too. I mean, let's be honest. GGG's trying to like implement all these things that make the players like be more active, like war cries, for instance, right? Like endurance charges, rallying cry, all that kind of stuff. It makes it more active everyone's always has the argument of PoE being a one-click game where you just use one
Mhm.
ability and everything blows up. They really are doing a great job at making players use more skills, but
Yeah.
armor just completely negates all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Like, I always play with as many like, I always feel like I don't have enough active skills on my bar. I'm just like, I need another button, especially with all
Yeah,
the war cries and the golems being introduced. Like, and Vol skills being so cool and useful. You need movement speed, sometimes a single target and an AoE, a curse. You're just in Blood Rage. You just need so many buttons, and I'm constantly feeling like I don't have enough. And I mean, I'm playing almost 10k armor character with almost 6k life, and with seven endurance charges and 360 life regen. I feel really fucking tanky. I am
yeah.
still scared of the volatile though. Volatiles and detonations. Those are things that I'm very vulnerable to. But I feel like you know people aren't really shifting towards the damage. They're not reacting to it. They're just going to complain about it instead of dealing with it. And in order to get other things that we kind of haven't addressed, I feel curses are now an actual choice. Now if you want to go assassin's mark, and get that crit damage and get that potential power charge return, you're risking something else. And people are overlooking the usage of enfeeble and temp chains as a form of massive control for your
Yeah.
character and clear speed. And if people would just use enfeeble more, then some things just don't feel as bad. But they're so used to that you know high roller, run and gun clear speed, that I guess it's easier just to complain than to react.
hmm I mean, in the past you didn't really like nothing you did mattered. Like if you had 4% more damage out of like a frenzy charge, in the past that thing wouldn't matter. But with the current balance of the game, every little bit matters, and it really helps you clear a lot faster. Especially since it takes longer to level up. I thought it's going to be easier to level up. In the past I would get like level 90 within whatever 30 hours at most. Now it took me like 5 days of playing 10 hours a day to get to level 90, 91. So game is definitely changing. I feel like the player base has to adapt as well, but it's gonna take some time.
Yeah, it kind of feels like what pre-nerf Invasion was. I mean, you guys were around for that, and you guys remember how much damage was incoming through those invaders, and people started to build around it. And look what we saw. We saw innovation at its finest. We saw freeze miners, quad cursors. People just felt like that was a necessity just to
Yeah.
get through the day and not die. But I like that. I like that people are coming up with new ways to survive, mitigate, and it has to get to that extreme level of damage for people to have incentive to do that. When it's your
Mhm.
life on the line. Or
Yep.
you could just play perfectly, react perfectly, log out perfectly, and roll the dice.
Log out perfectly is a funny statement.
Yeah. I mean, it is true. I could have just logged off in my situation and I would have been fine. I mean, I put myself in that situation, so it was
Right.
still my fault,
Yeah.
but
Armor is very strong right now, and everyone kind of needs it. Everyone needs that physical damage reduction. And Lightning Coil, Taste of Hate, and Cloak of Flame, all great options to get some extra physical damage reduction because they do work really well together. And also, we have or not together, but they work really well. Yeah, I guess together, whatever. But we also have the Warband's specific magic mod, the one that is on a helm. I don't know if you guys saw on the subreddit a couple days ago, but it is 10% physical damage taken as fire damage. Did you guys see that?
Mm-mm.
no.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, there are mods that are on warbands right now that you could get, from the warband parties, that they could drop an item with 10%. It's a magic item that you could craft. Shame it can't be internal crafted anymore, but you could craft it to have 10% physical damage taken as fire damage, which is half
Yeah.
the effect of a cloak of flame.
But
So
it's conversion. That's really cool.
yeah, I thought it was really cool. I haven't really seen too many things like that for Tempest. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen any specific mods for Tempest yet, but these are specific magic mods and warbands So
Yeah, and for the viewers that don't know what we're talking about, whenever you're taking like an influx of physical damage and you don't have any armor mitigation, you just take all of it, it's basically taking a portion of that and checking it by your resistance, which is more or less likely, 75. So you take a portion of that physical damage, check it by 75% of your resistance, and that's essentially, pseudo armor. And that's why it's good. That's why these things are so sought out for. But I want to know your opinions, Rise and Wabacha, of the price uh, of Lightning Coil in Tempest League right now being 15 exalts, unlinked. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think that was the right call, bad call? How do you guys feel about it?
One sec, just for the other conversation, can I just mention something?
yes,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
The I think actually a good solution to all of this, because basically what we were talking about, it was like as if we take resists for granted. Like everyone has 75% resist. It's easy to get. Uh, builds have all sorts of ways to achieving it, but it's mostly through gear. I think to increase the value of maybe not necessarily CI, but maybe like acrobatics, we should make it so that we stop taking those resists for granted. And I think a good way to do something like that would be maybe increasing chaos damage even further. So players would be forced into having to split up their resists between the elemental ones and the chaos. So that way everyone has the same kind of gearing, but the since it's more difficult to get resists now, the guys that have a lot of physical mitigation through armor that's easily attainable for them kind of have a problem with gearing themselves so that they can actually survive, those big volatiles like you were talking about and elemental damage in general. While this is greatly helped by, nodes like charisma and influence and sovereignty, where you have more room for additional resist auras or like phase acro, for instance, which is all easily attainable by shadows, witches, and templars, but not really available to the bottom side of the skill tree. So I think maybe something like that would be pretty cool, but it would require a lot of balancing.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. I feel like I'm already kind of doing that because I feel in this league I need to ramp up my chaos resist, and because I'm doing that, I'm sacrificing, suffixes. And honestly, with gear, chaos being so expensive, or chaos resist gear being so expensive, that to get an affordable piece, sometimes that's all it's going to have is life and chaos resist.
Yeah,
And
yeah, but I mean that reduces the survivability, which
so
is
are you saying
a
like
good thing.
purities are too strong? Like they give you way too much resist?
No, no,
Like
no.
as a base?
Make it so that casters essentially are better against elemental damage, and then the bottom side of the skill tree is better against physical
Oh,
damage.
yeah, okay. Yeah, that's
But you have to like balance it out well. Right now, physical damage is just a lot more than elemental damage, but this way you can balance it out. Because
yeah,
players,
I
because
think that's
players still
fair.
build their skill trees like they used to, which I don't think is correct. Where they get a lot of damage, they get 150 life, and then yeah, that's why a lot of people had a problem with Mind Over Matter in the beginning, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, my build is nerfed." Even though after a while, everyone's like, "You know what? Mind Over Matter is kind of okay. Eldritch Battery is not broken."
Hmm.
Right? So players should really start, in my opinion, building like less around getting damage because everyone does a ton of damage anyway, especially for solo play. I mean, in group play, it's a little bit different, but crit is still super powerful. Everyone does a ton of damage, but not a lot of people focus on actually building up their defenses as a caster. They just want those deeps, kill everything before it kills me. I don't care about anything else. While they could be building themselves more around being tankier against elemental damage.
Right. I mean, and a lot of the characters are, the archetypes. They already have that on the other areas. Like you have the archers that have potential to get acrobatics, or
Mhm.
Ondar's guile, and it's kind of like your own medicine. You're strong against it, and you have the armor characters that have endurance charges, tons of armor. But what do casters have? You can get like +1 lightning res. If you get the energy shield nodes, that's like super out of the way, and so many points to get to. I mean, it's so damn far, and it doesn't offer that much. You're better off just getting a flask, those flask nodes. But then that's not really passive mitigation against the elements. You're just as vulnerable to the elements as someone else without a flask.
I just don't think that we need more things that could kill players right now. We don't need more damage. We don't
Really?
need.
I thought about
I
increasing
mean,
the damage. The
yeah,
elemental damage.
right.
So I mean, it's the same thing as armor, right? They kept giving armor more and more, and like and that was doing nothing. So they're like, okay, so everything's gonna deal so much physical damage. They're gonna have to get armor, right?
Right,
And this
right.
is the same thing. I feel like we're on the transition stage where elemental like resistance not quite worth it. But if they gave it like, if they give like dischargers 20% more damage or something, then yeah, I think players are gonna start to consider stuff like that.
Rise, are you ready to have the community fling poo at you for saying that?
Always
Oh,
ready.
man. Oh
Well,
gosh.
okay, so I mean, a lot of things changed in 2.0 for the Awakening. All the Leech changes. Leech is not really in that good of a spot right now. The nodes on the tree are kind of, in my opinion, they're kind of half-assed, and Leech isn't nearly as good defensively anymore, and it makes it not very desirable to use. And we had other things that kind of help defenses. Classically, something that people would always worry about in Path of Exile was Reflect, right? That was something that you wanted good defenses for, so you could avoid Reflect. Now we don't necessarily need to worry about that nearly as much. Like when we do see Reflect, we have to worry about it, but it's not nearly as common, and it's a lot easier to deal with when you do see it. But then at the same time,
Yeah, that's the important part. You can see it now. It's like
Hmm.
very, very.
Yeah.
It's translated well to the player, and that's why we can deal with it, and we don't feel like it's so unfair.
right. Long story short, everyone needs physical damage reduction to some degree. The people who are already stacking armor, great for the melee characters that are using 7 endurance charges, fortify, and are wearing chest pieces with 1,000+ armor. Cool. It's all good for them. But if you're an evasion dodge character and you don't have the luxury of affording a 15 to 20 exalt lightning coil,
Yeah.
but you can't just use a cloak of flame. I mean, that is also another good option, just because even though the stats on it are not that good, it just gives you 20% physical damage to your fire, taken as fire. So that is obviously good, but everyone
Well,
could
we
really
never really got
benefit.
to hear your opinions on, the whole market thing with Lightning Coil and Taste of Hate. Like, how do you guys feel about that now that that's so desirable? Is it fair that they shifted the meta this way and then these items are that price or the
I don't
rarity
really
being increased?
I don't really think they meant to. I mean, I wouldn't say it's not fair or it is fair, but it's just the nature of what the changes that have come. I mean, Lightning Coil was really strong before. Lightning Coil has been, and we've talked about this on a previous podcast. I can't remember which one, but every most of the chess pieces that we have, most of the unique chess pieces have had their time like in the light, right? Like when their value shoots up for a league. Belly of the Beast did that for a while. Cloak of Defiance did that for a while. Lightning Coil did that for a while. And it started to kind of even out where they're all in that like 1 to 3 exalt range, or Carcass Jack is another example of this. But I think the biggest change behind Lightning Coil that has driven up its price is not necessarily the content that it is being used in, but more the fact that the rarity got changed. And they are far like they're now more effective because physical damage is higher and they are less or far more rare. And this is just what's driving up their prices. I
Well,
don't I don't think
Rise,
it's their choice.
what do you think about the whole Lightning Coil situation and the price and the availability?
I think it's pretty ridiculous because a lightning coil isn't in the current meta. Again, with the fizz, I hate to keep repeating this, but yeah, with the physical damage and everything, it's such a big necessity for so many builds to just be viable. I think a price for something like that is crazy. And I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a big fan of high cost, everything super difficult in PoE. I really love that aspect of the game. But if your build is completely dependent on it, it's a terrible mechanic. I mean, a lightning coil is not something like a carcass jack where you're like, well, I can have 20% more like AoE, but I could also not have it and clear a little bit slower. No, a lightning coil is I either have my character or it's dead.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I feel like they goofed up on that one.
yeah, I'm in total agreement with what Rise said. Like, it's kind of like it's a tease. It's like, hey, physical damage is serious. Here's the answer. Get a lightning coil. Oh wait, it's
Yeah.
15 exalts. Like, I'm like, really? I'm gonna have. I mean, it just seems so. That's the answer, but we can't get there. It's just not really feasible. Where, if it's at a 1 to 3x price range, anybody can work up to that. Just by saving a little bit. And I think the challenge with lightning coil in itself is dealing with the negative 60 chaos resist. Like, that's where you're gonna have to go shopping more, and the rares and anything that with lightning resistance is going to go up in value, and that's okay because it's already enough work to build around it. Then to pay a 15 exalt price range, that's like something only the elite players can do, and I think it was just the wrong call. If anything, they should have just made it more common, in my opinion.
But the best way to deal with that minus 60% lightning resist on a lightning coil is through Purity of Lightning. Like, in all honesty, because not only does Purity of Lightning cover a majority of that lost resistance, but it then gives you max resistance, which like furthers its effectiveness even more.
But you're still making that decision as a player because Aura's being so strong. Something is going to add some kind of element to the function, and whether you want to use like Herald of Lightning, Herald of Ash, whatever. It's still a character decision that you're going to make. That's going to negatively affect some other department if you run Purity of Lightning and things like that. Well, I mean, go ahead.
Like, I don't know if the reduction in resist is actually a downside to it. I like those things because, like I said before, I think players shouldn't be taking resist for granted in endgame content. But the real problem with a lightning coil is the fact that it simplifies the gameplay, but like I said before, the perfect storm, it might kill you. You might get critted, it's gonna shock you, and you're gonna instantly die. So there's also that aspect of a lightning coil which really should make them reconsider the current rarity tier that it's on.
So you're saying it's minus 60 is too easy, that you want them to increase it to minus 100, so it's a real downside.
You know what? Yeah, I'd probably prefer that over the random crit spiky damage that can most likely kill you.
Be careful now.
I definitely prefer that.
There you guys go. Playing more poo. Twitch.tv / RaizQT. You guys know where to dump it.
Wow, you bought out Twitch? It's now Rise.Twitch.tv? Well, that's impressive.
No. Did I say that?
Yeah, I'm joking.
My bad.
Well, hopefully we could see Lightning Coil as a race season reward. Ha! Segue. Cool. So racing next season coming up. Thoughts? What are your thoughts on it, Rise?
Super hyped that it's happening so fast. Perfect choice by GG, honestly. In the past, they would just literally wait until everyone quit the game before they would start the race season. I mean, I haven't been racing for long. I've only been racing for 2 seasons now, and that was definitely my impression. They just would always wait forever to start it, and now when the game is hyped, when the game is still growing, you can see actual growth every day, which doesn't happen with a lot of games. Most of them just release and then it's like downwards. Everything goes downwards. PoE is growing, racing is growing. People want to learn how to level fast. It's the perfect time. Really hyped about it.
Yeah, and I think this is again, to tag on to what you're saying, that it is the perfect time. Racing is such a unique element to Path of Exile in this, in action RPGs. As far as I'm aware, if there's another action RPG that does racing in this format, yell at me in the comments, whatever. I apologize, but the first time I was exposed to racing in action RPG was with Path of Exile, and it's a very fun, facet to our game. Like, it's a very interesting side to it. It does help you learn how to play the game effectively early on. The race rewards are great because most of the rewards are achievable by most players. The only problem with the rewards is that they're some seasons they're a little hit or miss. I think this season's kind of meh,
Big
but
miss, in my opinion. Holy crap! I look at the two-handed sword. It looks like a white sword. Honestly, the Edge of Madness is the most underwhelming thing I've ever seen, and it's sad because it's one of the two 3D arts. And I don't know about you guys, but that Wrath Pith globe, that looks like a ring pop, and I was like, man, that the only reason that I actually like seeing that is because Wrath-Pith Globe has also been increased in rarity. I don't know. We kind of like forgot to talk about Wrath-Pith, but that was another common unique that gave you substantial amount of spell block when you built around it, and no longer accessible to new players because it's just absurd. But I guess seeing that as a race reward is going to incentivize actually getting it. But the 3D I mean, I'm a sucker for art, and those two pieces seem very underwhelming compared to stuff we've seen in the past, like Alpha's Howl, the Queen's Decree, Sapphire's Frame.
Yeah.
The alternate art Sapphire's Frame was like the coolest art shield or shield
Yeah, and
for
then
art.
the 1,000 point reward, Emberwake. I mean, who's hyped about that? Because that's not me.
I mean, well, it's like player mentality. I don't know. Like to me, it's really weird that everyone wants to learn how to level fast and wants to learn about the game. I mean, it's all about knowledge when it comes to PoE. But when it comes to racing, knowledge is never enough of a reward for, it seems, anyone except me. I don't know.
Yeah, I
People
mean,
don't think about it that way. They don't look at racing as actually gaining knowledge. Instead, they look at it as in like, I don't know. I want to level faster, but I'm just not gonna do this. I really don't understand it. I don't get it.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to race, right? I mean, you do it for the spirit of competition, and it's fun, and challenge yourself, to min max and
Yeah.
improve your gameplay. And other people are like, well, the reward isn't good or the incentive is not good, then there's a chance that they don't even participate. Just like, well, if something something that was really awesome at that 500 point, they were like, man, this is the season that I want to get into, and I'm going to try to get that 500 point. Let me do some research. Let me contribute to the competition. That's healthy. So I think the art and it's not the reason that everyone races. Obviously, it's just an added bonus to the people that are just racing enthusiasts and like competition.
Hmm.
To bring in new players, I definitely think art is very, very important. And somebody for like me, I'm a sucker for alternate art and things
No, yeah.
like that.
I mean, well, you're totally right about that. Players do need that extra incentive. I've heard before, hey, Rice, how many races do you think I have to do to get 500 points? And I'm like, dude, I have no idea how you race. How like what the hell? I don't know. It might take you 10. It might take you, 250. You might not get it ever. I have no idea how you race. But I rarely hear oh, this season I'm gonna race because I really want to get this reward. I don't think I've ever heard that.
I think GGG could do a better job of getting newer players to debate racing, because as of
Yeah.
right now, if you go look at this right now, if I'm a new player and I look at this, I'm like, oh, okay, well, so these are the rewards, right? At 10 points, I can get this. At 40 points, I can get this white item. And they look at all these other things, and just like none of these are so good that you think, and to a newer player, none of these are so good that you think immediately, how do I get this? But then, even then, like getting a player just to even get to this point where they do come check it out, I think it could be done a little bit better by GGG. I don't necessarily know how. Maybe there could be some sort of a promotional video for the races, because again, since it is kind of a newer element to action RPGs, people may be coming into this game and are completely unaware of these short duration races. Maybe it's just because GGG doesn't give the information to the newer players well enough so they understand, oh, this race is a 12-minute race that I make a new character in. or that's just an example of it. But I mean, I don't know. Like the prizes aren't so good that they're going to just immediately bring people in, and the alternate art, a newer player is going to catch on to that immediately, and I don't know. But
To me, well, like, sorry to cut you off,
you're
but
good.
to me, GGG has kind of a wrong idea how to go about racing right now, because they do incentivize this, so to say, right? When there were like charity races and all that kind of stuff, it was like, get to level 60. And it incentivizes playing the game, but it doesn't, you're not racing. You're not actually trying to do something fast. So I feel like that's the big problem. They should really start rewarding players to do like a certain thing in a certain amount of time. Let's say you get this thing if you do this thing under 10 hours playtime on a character, which is, difficult, but that's what racing is. It's supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be competitive. If it's not competitive, call it something else, not racing.
Well, and so to add to that, I think another good way to possibly do it is saying like, oh, if you participate in let's just say 2 or 3 events in this week of racing, the scheduled week, you are entered for a chance to win, an MTX or something like that. Kind of what they've done with the charity events that, if you get to this level, you have a chance to win these MTXs. That could be a way to bring in newer players, but
right.
Yeah,
Or
I
if
think
like
it's a good way.
if they had like even there's like the stepping stones, like say 100 and 500, if they come with like just a minuscule amount of MTX, that could be very appealing for somebody to be like, well, at least I didn't do this for nothing. Like sometimes it only takes someone just to get their feet wet until they get hooked, and then they're getting into all the science behind racing. And there are a lot of different ways. Gold Rim would have been an excellent choice, seeing as that rarity has gone through the roof. A new player is going to see a Gold Rim at the second tier or third tier reward and be like, hey, that thing is pretty good. Let me see what this racing's all about, and dive right in. But
That's actually brilliant, yeah.
You look at these 2 stone ring, that's white. That's not going to appeal to a new player.
Yeah, that's not clear to a new player at all. Like a white item to us, we're like, oh,
level
cool,
20.
It's a level 100 item, but most people aren't in a position to benefit from having a level 100 item.
And then the Chaos Edge of Madness, and then the Ungol's Harmony, like all those things that don't appeal to a lot of players. And yeah, I think that's just a missed opportunity. But yeah, something as a little MTX here, or some kind of competition for MTX. A stash tab. It doesn't even have to be a value. Just be like, you get a stash tab, 1 stash tab.
Right. Yeah,
little
one
can
basic
go
stash
a long
tab.
way.
But they know that they've been trying to like do that, and it's been working. But it's working for content. It's not working for racing, in my opinion. What you said was actually really great to incentivize racing. It's like, hey, like Rapid, like you guys talked about, is the perfect example of this. It's so rare right now. Getting 500 points out of racing for it's typically worth it. Like Rapids are like way too much currency right now, like 20 exalts or something on Tempest. It's pretty ridiculous. So a gold rim for 10 points? The collectors still keep their stuff because, you can still keep it in your stash and keep it forever. And sure, there's going to be a lot of the gold rims, but in time, they're going to go away, and your gold rim's going to stay there, so they still stay happy. And the players that actually want to learn how to level fast and do stuff like that, they can get this gold rim, and by having by them being able to play more aggressive, they're learning more. They don't have to worry as much about staying alive. I really like that idea. Give players rewards that actually matter, not necessarily that are just like cool and that's it.
Yeah.
Although the Emberwake ruby ring is pretty cool. I think
but
very
it's 1,000 points.
No, it is. Yeah, it's 1,000 points, but I think that unique is actually very interesting. And in all honesty, most players aren't going to be getting 1,000 points. I don't know how many players compared to the population that race actually do get 1,000 points.
Race probably knows. Is it like 50 or something?
I don't think it's 50.
I don't think it's even that. I mean,
think it's
racing
more
has been
like
getting
10.
less and less popular, less and less. Pretty much nobody's racing. That's why this race season is going to be a lot more interesting, I feel, because so many new players are joining the game. So many old players have the whole "I don't have anything to do anymore in this game" kind of approach. So yeah, this one's gonna be a lot different in my opinion, a lot more competitive. But in the past, I don't know, people would get like maybe 10 people get 1,000 points the last two race seasons. I don't quite remember, but
Well,
it was a very small amount of people
you
that actually cared
say
about it.
you say racing is getting less pop or it was getting less popular. Like, why do you think it was getting less popular? Is it because of balance
No.
issues or QQing about, this is only one way to play? It's like, I
Well,
mean,
there were a lot of like meta things, so to say, that
mhm.
happened. Like a lot of the racers were whining about cheaters and that, like basically you can't play because people are cheating and doing this and that, which a new player doesn't understand that the same way that you don't understand the 40 points ring, right? All they hear is auto-potting, cheater, log out, map hack, and they're like, well, I can't compete with this. This is stupid. Like, why would I ever put my time into this? Nothing, like, you
So,
don't have to be a legit good player to actually do these things. All you have to do is cheat. And they don't understand it, so they don't want to get into it. And then they go and talk to their friends who have, and now these guys have the same opinion, and it's just like a really
spreads
bad,
like cancer.
yeah, it just spreads like cancer pretty much. Yeah.
So
It's
it
pretty.
wasn't the Templar Flame Blast, it wasn't that meta that kind of like drove interest down, or
I don't think so. I think first of all, a thing that GGG should really do is start it so that players actually have a reason to play a specific class. Because if you look at the international from last race season, it was like everyone that didn't even want to play Templar was playing Templar. Everyone that had no experience with Templar, they had to do it because to win, you had to play Templar. But if they would say, hey, first player of every class gets this and this, everyone would be a lot happier. And this is the same thing. If they would make a season where I'm forced to play Ranger to win, to be first overall, I wouldn't freaking play it. I don't like Ranger. I like Scion. I was racing Scion. I was doing okay. Wasn't the strongest, but it's still alright. You can be competitive with it. It's not crazy. But if they would make it Ranger and would force me to play Spectral Throw, every single race, I don't like that play style. It's not for me. I wouldn't race. And I feel like this is the same for a lot of people who don't want to race with Fire Trap and Flame Totem, which is
yeah.
probably what's going to happen this season.
But Flame Dash is cool.
Seems
Flame
like
Dash is
in order to be competitive and to win, you're gonna have to be Tharas's twin brother or something.
pretty much. I mean,
Oh god.
you don't have to be number one overall. I mean, you get demis for being first in your class, but it's just not enough because people, if there's no Marauder in the top 50, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
This guy might be like the best player ever. He might be 10 times better than Thras, but nobody ever heard about him because, well, guess what? He plays Marauder, and no matter how well he plays, he's gonna be first in his class, but he's gonna be like in the top 200 somewhere, elsewhere,
Oh,
below
so we're
all the
talking about
Templars.
Morse. I'm just kidding.
Uh, well,
No, careful. Careful
Okay.
there.
Just you cut
Well,
that
I
out.
think one thing about racing that, isn't really communicated well to players in general is just it's it is a lot of fun and it's actually pretty easy to get the prizes. And it's not like inconceivable. And once you do a few races, once you kind of realize, oh, hey, I could get, and easily I could get 15 to 20 points each race, with relative ease, you know, it's at that point it becomes easy to get these prizes, and you also get the prizes that are per race. You get the demis or the alternate art items. Like I have a ton of from one of the race seasons I did a while ago. I have a ton of life sprigs and Pillar of the Cage Gods just in my remove only tab. So I don't know. They're a lot of fun.
I mean, aside from prizes, I mean, we're missing out one of the major things, like the whole racing meta, the whole muling, and the whole getting gems. Everything is gonna have to be figured out. I mean, new layouts, new waypoints, getting shit stomped by what's his name, Malachi, or having to go through Act 4. I mean, those things. I mean, this essentially is a reset, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
what everybody
Well,
knows of the previous meta is not going to apply here. Like really, because you're dealing with new scaling, new support, potential supports, new potential farming areas, places you'll want to skip. I mean, who's going to figure that out?
Everyone.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
probably
I mean, one
Thras
guy's
and
gonna figure it out, and
Yeah.
everyone's gonna like pretend like they know everything.
yeah.
That's.
But like, I wonder
I
what
mean, most
Thras
of
is
it
doing.
was figured out on the beta, but
Yeah, but I mean, if there's any time to start learning how to race, I guess now is essentially a reset for everybody. They're gonna have to relearn all the good stuff, the new breakpoints, flasks. I mean,
yeah.
Jesus, it's just and the whole difficulty, the damage scaling. People are gonna get shits on. They're like, "What the hell? I used to race like this all the time. Now I'm taking
Yeah.
so much damage, and now I actually need more resist." And they're gonna have different checkpoints, which is everything is just getting shifted. I find fascinating. Like this is the first time
It is.
racing is getting a
Yeah,
huge chance at
that's the
rebalance.
thing.
What was the
That's the
like?
thing.
What was a good time to kill Dominus or to get through normal in a race
Oh, that's a good question.
In the past, a
in the
good
past?
time.
Yeah.
A good, well, like a decent time was like an hour 40, I want to say, in the past
So
to
what do
kill
you think?
Dominus.
Like, if you were to go in, obviously you're going in this racing season, and if we ever have these events that are 2 to 3 hours, what is your goal? Like, how does Malachi fit into that? Like, what's your goal on time for a Malachi kill?
For a Malachi kill right now?
Yeah.
Oh wow. It's so different. It's so RNG based right now compared to what it used to be because since zones are so packed and there's so many zones that are the same level, there's a humongous difference between group play and solo play. And again, since zones are so packed, like movement speed boosts are a lot more important and like double quicksilvers because you're running a lot more. You're literally running more than you're killing to the point even when in the past it was kind of difficult to keep your quicksilvers up with killing mobs. Now you over level if you just want to keep your quicksilvers up. So I'm not quite sure about the exact time. It really like Malachi's still getting changed and stuff like that. You can do it under 2 hours, I think, but it's gonna be kind of
I
rough.
mean,
In a group, you can definitely do it under 2 hours.
one of the first times that I played Awakening, and this happens every single time I go through this zone, but every single time I'm in Combs, oh wait, not Combs. Every single time I'm in Calm's zone, I seriously, I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare when I'm racing. If I ever get to that point, just because like that area it's so like unnecessarily long and yeah, I don't know. I'm not looking
Well,
forward to that zone specifically.
in general, Act 4 is, I think, it has like zero potential for racing, in
Really?
all honesty. It's too many speed bumps. The bosses don't give you any XP. There's too much like fiddling around with things.
They one shot
And
you.
yeah, they one-shot you. There's that. I feel like most of the races are going to be under Act 4, and if there's going to be anything that can, like, even if it's a hour where you can kill Malachi and still have an hour or something to farm, people are still going to sit in Act 4. They're not going to try and go for the bosses. They're just going to farm Aqueduct. It's just too big of a speed bump. So that's kind of disappointing. But we'll see if it's actually going to turn out like that. In general, the leveling is kind of messed up right now. So I hope they're going to change some things based off of the race season.
Yeah, I wonder how much of the design of Act 4 was, considered with when it comes to racing. Because that is something that GGG kind of, I'd imagine, prides themselves on, that they have these race seasons.
Oh,
I'm sure at their office, they're like, players are going to love this. They're going to enjoy it. It's so much fun. And they see all this, hype around it. But then when they design something like Act 4, like how much of that is actually thought, like how much of the racing meta is thought of when they design an entirely new zone at all? Like, do they think of it any? Do they think of it a little
Well,
bit? Because right
Yeah.
now it seems like they didn't think of it
I
nearly at all.
mean, I think it was Carl or Rory that stated that they were going back to the roots with the beginning of the skill trees. So that was a really big incentive for them to go back and revisit the balance of other classes, especially in early levels, for mainly because of racing. They said that they liked that design and they would like to go back to it, and so we've seen adjustments. But however, I mean, they've added a whole new way to level with all the support gems, which makes me think, I mean, is group play going to be less I mean, it's always going to have its bonuses, but is it going to be less effective because now that people are going to be able to get their supports without, hey, I need your LMP at this point, or I need this at this point, or trade it to me, or drop it, or you know,
No, group play is way more valuable right now than it
really.
was in the past. Yes, it's strictly because if you look at Act 2, for instance, Act 2 in Cruel has 7 zones that are the exact same level. So if you have a group of like 4 people, literally you all split up and go to a different zone just for progression because
Okay.
you want to avoid running as much as possible.
Well, I mean,
Oh, and
do you think that group play is going to be increased, like the gap is increased or decreased with the whole shift of everything pretty much?
think groups will be able to progress faster, but I mean, I don't know if it's going to make group play, uh, if it's going to make players more interested in group play. I'm
Hmm.
not quite sure about that. Well, there's also this thing. I said that there's literally like no potential for Act 4 for racing, but that's not true at all now that I think about it, because they introduced these really cool boss kill races, and considering how difficult to some people, how difficult Act 4 is, you can really see that in the past with, for instance, Dominus or Piety races. It was a race at who can throw themselves on onto the boss and just, yeah, YOLO it, right? Racing in
Hmm.
general is kind of YOLO. You don't get any survivability. It's all damage, and if you get lucky, you get lucky. If you don't get lucky, well, somebody else is gonna get lucky and you're probably gonna die or whatever, right? But in this case, it's going to be even more that, because it is kind of a gear check. Some of the fights are gear checks, and if we completely exclude RNG, it will boil down to who YOLO's better, right? Which is kind of, I like that.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So we'll see a lot of interesting boss kill races, and
I
those
mean,
are honestly my favorites. So
kind of
yeah.
off topic, but I would love to see it where a race came down to how many portal scrolls you had to kill Malachi. You were like, oh, I only got 8. I ain't gonna kill him today unless I go like super YOLO, and he's like down to his last portal scroll to see if he can kill it.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I mean, they are nerfing normal substantially. They said in a recent patch notes that Act 4 normal is going to see some major rebalancing. So that may open it up for racing potential too. So
Hmm.
we'll see.
Well, I think we could all agree that we're, regardless of the criticisms that we may have given out, we are excited for the race season. It's been a long time that since we've had like a good race season, and it's nice to get back into it. And it's also going to be fun with all the new players, and it's also nice that it is changing completely with this. Like Gemini had said, with the zones changing and new waypoints in certain locations. I'm glad I won't have to run the mud flats anymore just to go back in to kill Hellrake to get a Quicksilver. Like, I'm glad that changes in. It's going to
The
be a
new
lot of
gems,
fun, huh?
the new gems
The
and
new
supports,
Yeah, the new
huge.
gems. It's going to be a lot easier to get supports. Um, and also Rise had said that it is going to at least encourage group play a little bit more. That doesn't necessarily mean it will happen, but it's going to encourage it a little bit more. It's going to make it more team oriented, which I think is really good, especially for the active guilds that are out there. So I'm excited for the race season. It's starting Thursday or Thursday. Yeah, it's
I thought it
starting
was
Thursday.
Friday. Oh, okay. No,
It started
maybe it's
Thursday
Thursday.
at 1 p.m. Oh, tomorrow. Wow, that's tomorrow, isn't it?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Oh, awesome. It starts tomorrow. Well,
We're leaving
actually, I
that
shouldn't
in.
even say that. The race season is starting this week. It's really exciting. So cool. Well, but I know that actually, Rise, you do have to go. You have some things you got to take care of today.
That is true.
So, Rise, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. Do you want to have any last words or say anything before we head
Because
out?
you're gonna die. Last words, Rise.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. If you guys want to check out my content, it's twitch.tv/RaizQT. I stream pretty much daily, and that's about it. There's going to be a lot of races happening, so if you're interested in that, feel free to tune in and check it out.
All right, and Hedgie, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was a pleasure talking to Rise, getting to pick his brain. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, just love talking about Path of Exile. You can find my content on YouTube. It's it's youtube.com/HegemonyPoE and twitch.tv/HegemonyTV if you want to catch me live.
All right. And also, you're probably on my YouTube right now, but you could find that just in case you're hearing this through some other means. But it is Wabacha TV or just Wabacha on YouTube. You could search for it. Also, I am actually going to start streaming now at twitch.tv/Wabacha. You could check the schedule out, but it's pretty much going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday from about 9 a.m. Pacific to about 1 a.m. or 9 p.m. Pacific to 1 a.m. Thank you guys very much for listening to What's Up Wraeclast, and we'll see you guys later.
Later.
Thanks. Hey, what's up, guys? So, as some of you might have heard, I actually ended up dying last night, and some people didn't understand the rip, didn't quite know what happened, didn't quite understand how you can die with this amount of life. I'm just gonna go in detail over my rip, hopefully in detail. Hopefully I'm understanding everything right. Alright, so let's go. Let's just watch it for the first time. You can see I'm kind of scrolling through this map. The character is actually very powerful, and then boom! And I'm dead. Instantly, 9k life. I'm dead. How did this happen?